safe to say I gasped out of sheer shock, probably 4 or 5 different times from this Silo episode. Not only did we have huge bits of information provided to us about characters that we thought weren't on our side but are, we had the biggest character reveal of the entire show. As always, I'm going to go through it scene by scene and break it all down, and then we're going to theorise as to what could be on the way next. There are chapters below on the scroll bar, should you need them. The episode begins with Camille exiting the vault and Robert Sims arriving to meet her. She explains that Juliette isn't going to make it, but he sees through that. He knows this is just what the algorithm is suggesting. He makes it clear that he wants to help and that she should leave him to deal with Jules. Camille wants Jules unconscious when she arrives. Instead of injecting Juliette, however, she instead uses it on Emerson, who puts up a good fight, but luckily passes out before she can strangle her. When Robert and Camille arrive, they see the state of the room. They go to help Emerson. Meanwhile, Juliette and the nurse are still trying to make their escape through medical. Shirley has had a change of heart and realises she was wrong for abandoning Juliette, so she wants to go and help her. In the morgue, we learn that Orla was murdered. She wasn't killed in the gassing of the mines, she was killed with a blow to the head. She was put in the mines by whoever killed her with the intention of never being found. Billings now has a homicide investigation on his hands, and he's going to head down to Supply because he wants to speak to Carla McLean. With Lucas essentially being held hostage by the outsiders, Kennedy arrives. Lucas is trying to get into Patrick Kennedy's head that it is not safe outside, and of course Kennedy, who's believing his own brainwashing at this point, is insisting that it is. He brings up the video, and Lucas explains that that is just played inside the helmets of those who go out to clean. It's basically a way to get them to clean the monitor to the main silo. Although Patrick Kennedy is being stubborn, Kathleen and Sandy aren't, and they actually seem to be almost buying into what Lucas is saying. I found it quite interesting how quickly they shifted. Danny runs in explaining that Judicial are just outside the door. They're working their way down the levels because they're on the hunt for Julia and the nurse. The action cuts back to medical where Knox creates a distraction so that Shirley can go inside. While he's getting the poop kicked out of him, she's in there listening to Robert and Camille discuss what they want to do to Juliette and how it needs to be done tonight. We hear Robert say how all the cameras in medical were shut down. And this is our first clue here. Who would have access to all the cameras and be able to turn them off so that things could go directly under the radar? Of course, it was Sims himself. The two of them are hiding in a storage cupboard and Juliette can't really see a way out. Until the nurse explains that she grew up in medical, and actually she knows of a lot of tunnels, a way they can get out. Whilst Juliette is debating whether or not to go down there and whether or not to trust her, the nurse explains that she was swapping out Juliette's pills, and that she was given orders by somebody to do so. Even though Jules had been spitting out the pills and she'd caught on to everything, it didn't matter anyway. That's why in episode 1 we saw these slithers of Juliette's memory coming back. That's why it wasn't working. Not because she was resisting the pills somehow, but because the nurse herself was reducing the dose. This was one of the biggest twists of the episode for me, because I was so unsure about this nurse and I thought there was something so off about her. To find out that she's been on our side the entire time I really wasn't expecting that at all, actually. Billings arrives in Supply and faces not Carla, but Orla's boyfriend, Mike Davidson. He says that Carla hasn't been here for months, a concern that I'm going to come back to at the end. There's something very off with Mike. Orla has been missing for days, but he's completely chill about it and doesn't seem too concerned. Billings, of course, at this point is wondering if Carla is dead too, and probably in the back of his mind he's thinking about Harwood's daughter, considering that she was the previous Shadow and she hasn't shown up either. With Judicial on their tail, the two of them realise they need to split up. She tells Juliette to go to the pump room on 76. Jules walks on into the room, and who's there waiting for her? It's Robert Sims. As he says, "You need to listen to me," she panics and immediately runs back out the door, holding it shut. Shirley comes along, smashes off the handle, and the two of them run away, leaving Sims trapped in the room. Shirley wants to take Jules down to mechanical because she knows some places they can hide, but Jules is adamant that she wants to go and find Lukas Kyle. So instead, Shirley agrees to take Juliette to where she last took Lucas, the digger void. There's a lovely scene here between Jules and Shirley about how she has this gut instinct. She says, "I feel if someone would do anything to you, I'd kill them. It's very sweet to me how this concept of love can't be damaged or broken by the memory suppression and how it's kind of always there. I even think that she felt this with Walker, and that's why she trusted her when they had that conversation in the cafeteria. They're able to get through the gap by using the help of Ossie and the winch. I also find it interesting how a lot of people in the silo, as soon as they realise their mare needs help, they all kind of bend over backwards to help her. We saw this in a previous episode with Jerry, and also the way Evelyn was talking to Jules and how much she idolises her. To me, it's becoming more and more obvious that not only is Juliette more well-liked, but also more liked and more trusted than Camille or Robert Sims. Sandy is watching this whole process play out, and she goes back to Kennedy and the rest of the group to explain that Juliette is going down past the gap. Lucas knows they're going down to the digger void, and he says that he needs to stop her. Remember, last season he spoke to the algorithm at the door, and he's basically worried that if she goes down there and triggers that, then the algorithm might alert Camille. Lucas says essentially, if you want the truth, let's go speak to Juliette, and Kennedy agrees. We know that they'll probably use the tunnel system that they've used before. It's making me think as well that if this nurse knew about all these tunnels, is she part of the Outsiders? Is she working with Robert Sims? I'm going to go over a little bit more about that at the end and some possible theories there. When Billings is snooping around, Glenda Harwood walks in, the previous Shadow. Now that Orla hasn't shown up and Carla isn't around either, she's come back to take over her previous job. I don't know what it is specifically, but Glenda doesn't seem anywhere near as off as Mike does, but that might just be wishful thinking. It's safe to say that Billings is basically hesitant of everybody at this point, especially that Carla isn't anywhere to be seen either. Juliette starts to remember elements of the void. Shirley explains how she had a boyfriend, and she starts to get glimpses of George. There's a small door that's been made, and Jules is able to open the latch. She goes on alone as Shirley runs back to see if someone was following them. Jules works her way down the ladder. She sees the old camp, just like the one that George had when he was there. She pulls back the drape, and who's laying there? It's Bernard. Robert Sims didn't kill him. He's been keeping him alive, but what now we need to figure out is why. Just like with Silo 18, where the episode follows on from where it left off before, the same occurs with the before times. We cut to Daniel and Helen outside of Steve's apartment, panicking about what to do next. For fear of being listened to, Helen writes an address on Daniel's hand and asks him to meet her there. We essentially find out that this is her ex-boyfriend's apartment, and because he's away, they're going to be laying low there. The apartment itself has an interesting vibe to me. Somehow it reminded me of the Legacy Room in an odd way. Just the ornaments on the shelves and the paintings and posters all over the walls. I couldn't quite tell if any of the things in the apartment were things that we've seen before. Maybe it was just the style of it. A very specific detail that I liked a lot was this giant poster in the background that says "A New Sheriff," and it would always be there in frame whenever Helen was sat in the front of shot. She is now the new sheriff. We've seen Jules be this character who's trying to deduce everything and break things down, and now it's Helen's turn. Another thing to mention, something again I spotted when editing the previous video, is Daniel's watch. It looks remarkably similar to Juliette's that we've seen in the previous 2 seasons, and I'm wondering if right in front of our eyes this is another relic. I've got nothing to prove that as of right now, just the fact that it has a black strap, the gold rim, and of course the white face of the watch. It is remarkably similar. Juliette's watch was being worn by her father when he was about to blow up the stairwell. The thing is, he never kept it, he gave it to Hank. So it's got me wondering if we're going to see that watch again sometime. There's an eerie line that Daniel says through this entire sequence. He's looking at a picture of Helen on the wall, a photograph that was probably taken by her ex. He says, "First thing I do when a relationship ends is bury all the evidence in the earth." It's a really odd line to me if it does mean he is part of the building of the silos. We saw in episode 1 of this season that he was part of building a digger that could dig underground but not disturb the ground on top. This line may mean nothing, but I think this show is too smart for that. I also haven't been able to work out who the man is in this poster. It seems to me like somebody from an old 60s or 70s western, so if you do by any chance know, please do comment it below. I've tried to Google but I can't find anything. Helen kept her keycard and she went back to her old office to use her computer. She was looking into Steve and she tried his phone number but it wasn't in use. Also she tried another number and that wasn't in use as well. It belonged to the father of one of Charlotte's squadron members, the one from the funeral. They discussed discuss going to the police, but they both know that's useless. They don't have any evidence, and also it's probably likely to all be shut down by sort of higher powers. They're stuck in this together, so what they need to do is find that audio tape. Remember, we learned that somebody in Moldova had a copy of it, and what they want to do is find that and leak it. Daniel remembers that chess game, the one that we saw Steve and another opponent playing when he was scanning Daniel's keycard. Helen suggests that maybe this wasn't a game and actually a form of communication. She refers to the Snowden leaks and how the use of video games was used to send messages within underground organisations. Have to be careful what words I'm using on YouTube. They're both pondering over what it could all mean. Helen suggests the king has fallen, but the truth is they don't really know. We also know there was that message saying, "I MB tracked you." We discussed in the Discord at the time that maybe this means I might be tracked. You. Not only are they looking for the audio tape, but they realise they have to find this other chess player. And Daniel thinks he knows a guy. Helen wakes to see Daniel not around, and it's quite sweet actually, because you can tell that she thinks he's gone, and I think she was already getting used to him being around. But instead, he didn't leave, he just went to get breakfast. And while he was there, he made a phone call. They have a meeting at the Pentagon with one of his contacts. We find out this contact is Sam, an old buddy of his. It's clear Sam has the set of skills that we need, and he is the guy that's going to help them find someone. It's whether or not he's willing to do it. Daniel explains about Charlotte, the Iran mission, and why they're even looking into this in the first place. They explain how they heard the recording, about how the airplanes were no longer controlled by the pilots, and that their contacts have gone missing. Of course, Sam is completely guarded and doesn't want to get involved in all this. He has loved ones that he wants to protect. As much as he wants to help Daniel, he can't put himself under this level of threat. At this point, the character who I like to call the creepy watcher is stood there lurking in the shadows. However, instead of staying there, this time he walks over to Daniel and Helen and invites them to sit and have coffee, because there's some things they need to talk about. Now the truth starts to unravel. Steve Price, the man who played them the audio tape, has been offered a new dream job. The father we met at the funeral has been given a nice hefty loan to help his brother's business. They've all been paid off, essentially, to stay quiet. And this man explains that Daniel and Helen are endangering something very important. Now it's time for their bargains. He offers Helen a job at the Times. A good offer for somebody who in the past has committed journalistic fraud. We learn more about that in a minute. Daniel's bargain is there will essentially no longer be care for Charlotte. Daniel is against all this and frankly disgusted that they've even offered this to him. But I think Helen knows they're up against bigger chess pieces than their own. He thinks he can get the word out, get in front of people and leak all this, but Helen knows they have absolutely no evidence. You can see that she's worried about him, asking him to basically keep his head down and not get into too much trouble. I don't think in this moment she really wants him to go further with this, given the situation they're currently in and the evidence they currently have, which is nothing. Even though they have plenty of anecdotal evidence, Charlotte isn't in a place where she can testify, and they don't have that audio tape. So they part ways. The camera keeps panning back to long shots during the end of this scene, and I still feel like they're being watched. So I'm wondering if we're going to meet this silver-haired man again, even though we finally know what it is that he wants from them. A few days have passed, and we see Daniel one evening sat at his desk. He's looking into Helen. We see an article that shows she admitted to faking evidence in the past when she was working at the Washington Post. A little detail that probably means nothing, but it was something that I found too uncanny not to mention, is the name of the person who wrote this article is Jules. I didn't find this until I was looking on the How Did We Lose This World website, which is a website basically attached to the show. I'm going to go through it again at the end of this video and show you what else I found. He gets a phone call, and it's from Sam. He's gone down a rabbit hole and he's found something that he says Daniel is not going to believe. Knowing he can't do this alone, Daniel goes back to Helen, asking for her to join him. So off they go in this newly hired minivan with whatever Sam has just provided them. The title of this episode is Whatever You Do, Don't Go Home. And of course that's referring to the before times and Silo 18. Daniel and Helen having to use essentially a safe house, and Juliette not being able to go back down to mechanical and instead having to go elsewhere. You could also argue Bernard being unable to go back to the silo and is basically being held in this limbo space underneath it. This idea that whatever they do, they can't go home. There is no home to go to because it's too dangerous right now. Like I mentioned mentioned earlier with that sheriff poster. We've seen Juliette be the one putting pieces together, and now there's a new sheriff in town. And now it's Helen's turn. We can see that because of what's escalating, what Charlotte would have figured out, and everything to do with the Iran mission, the old world is not going to be the same. They're not going to be able to go back to normal. Whatever happens, even if they go back to their normal lives and their normal jobs, nothing's really ever going to be the same again. Another thing I've already touched on is the idea of people within the silo picking what is morally right as opposed to what they are supposed to do. Now, we don't know the true intention of why this nurse was willing to swap the pills out and help Juliette. All we know is that she's been told by somebody to do this, and as of right now we can assume this is Robert Sims. But the fact she is even willing to do it, the fact that Ossie is even willing to let Shirley and the mayor use the winch, the fact Jerry is willing to give the mayor space and let her roam the silo on their own. Even in the before times with Steve allowing them to listen to the audio tape even though he knows the consequences of that. And Sam coming round and wanting to help Daniel. Even when wrong, like the likes of Patrick Kennedy, people want to do the right thing and they want to search for the truth, whether that be in the times of the silo or 350 years earlier in the before times. I don't know if I'm just looking into this too much, but one thing I noticed specifically in this episode is a lot of the characters are descending, whether it be physically or metaphorically. Juliette, Bernard, the digger void, everybody's working their way down as opposed to up. In order to look for the truth, they're trying to dig deeper as opposed to climbing up the ladder to see what someone in a higher up position knows. You can also see this within the before times with the likes of Helen and Daniel using Steve, someone who lays underground outside of the internet and the World Wide Web and is somebody who works in the shadows. They're willing to go there because they can't go further into the systems because they know that they're just going to be stopped anyway. In the earlier seasons of this show, it's always been a case of hierarchy and working up to the top. Whether it be Sims being Bernard's shadow and then Lukas being replaced as that shadow. Now we're seeing characters work down these systems, work with people outside of these ranks, because that's actually where the truth lies. The further up they go, the more questions they have, but the less answers that they get. This idea of everything being buried, just even that line where Daniel said, whenever a relationship ends for me, I'm paraphrasing here, but I bury things in the ground, I put things in the earth. The memories are being buried. Even bodies are being buried, whether it be Orla or Bernard all the way down in the digger void. Technology is even being buried. We know that Charlotte's squadron could have used more advanced tech, but they didn't. We know all the computers in the silo should be more advanced than they are. But they're not. They're using old tech, and all the new stuff has been buried. For lack of a better metaphor, everyone's just like a little mole that's working their way through these tunnels, whether it be in Silo 18 or the before times. Everybody is working underground or under the radar in one way or another. Now, I spoke earlier about Daniel's watch and how similar it is to Juliette's. I'll put some pictures on the screen here so you can take a look at them and decide for yourself. The question I have is, are Daniel and Helen in some way related to Juliette? Is Juliette basically a descendant of Daniel or Helen, or perhaps Daniel and Helen together? Should they get together and make their ways into the silo? We can't answer that for sure right now, and even if she had Daniel's watch, it doesn't in any way mean that she's related. But what we do know, because we've seen a clip in the trailer, is Daniel and Helen seemingly walk into a silo probably around the time that they're built and opened up to the public. Even if they're not related, Jules has held both the Pez and the watch in her hands, and these were two items held by Daniel over 350 years earlier. I want to go through some specific characters, and first I'm going to start with Robert Sims. Now, I wasn't 100% sure if he hadn't killed Bernard, but there was something very off about that scene that we saw, I think it was in episode 1 if I'm correct, where he's talking to Camille, we see that flashback of him suffocating Bernard. Something seemed very off, and I think it was wishful thinking at the time. I was hoping that Bernard wasn't dead, but I'm very, very happy that he's still alive because I adore that character so much. What I want to know as the episodes go on is why Robert Sims has done this. What I can assume at the moment is he knows Bernard has answers, and I think he's worked out that the algorithm wants to kill everybody off and wipe identity and humanity from the silo. At the end of the day, it is a machine, as far as we know, that is looking to keep the population alive, not individual memory and individual character alive. And he is rejecting the idea. He doesn't like it. We've even seen the way he's thinking about his own son and his own family. Is he keeping Bernard alive just for answers? Or is it more than that? Does he know that Bernard is an incredible asset to the truth and what they actually want to learn about the outside and the before times? Is that why he wants to work with Juliette instead of killing her? And that instead he wants to fake her death just like he did with Bernard? Does he also want to do the same with Lukas Kyle? I'm interested to see at some point in time, is Robert slowly going to detach from Camille? And is he going to start working with the outsiders or Juliette or other people that are in search of this truth? Another character I feel is important to talk about is Carla McLean. Now, we haven't seen her since the end of season 2. We just know that she's missing. Now, there was things also going missing from Supply. Is she the reason for that? Has she been sending things down to Sims in order to help Bernard? Does she know about this? Or is something else going on? And if Orla is now dead, did she die at the hands of Sims and everything that he's trying to do behind the scenes? Or is it through her boyfriend? When watching the episode, her boyfriend Mike really reminded me of that guy. I'll use editing Claudie to come up with a name because I can't remember it off the top of my head right now. But the guy that Sims threw over the side down the stairwell in season 1, I think it was. He was somebody who worked at Judicial. It's a little bit of a stretch, but I was wondering, given the posture and appearance that he had, is he working for Sims? Is he passing things down from Supply to even Carla McLean or something like that, and handing that off to Bernard? We won't know until the show goes on, but I'm wondering what connections there are here. We know that this nurse on some level is working with Sims. Possibly Mike Davidson is as well. If we know that Walker was the one that closed up the digger void, why is there now a door and an entryway for people to come in and out? Is that the work of Carla McLean? Is it the work of Walker herself? Or is it Sims or just somebody else that we haven't met yet? I'm wondering to what degree these characters are interlinked and we just don't realise it yet. We have the individuals, the likes of Jules and Lucas. Then we have the groups. We have the outsiders and everybody that works around Kennedy. And then, of course, you have the people up top. You have Camille, the algorithm, and all the people at Judicial that are working for them. But of course, there are these people branching off from that, like we've just seen in this episode with Robert Sims. And I'm wondering, as the episodes go on, how many more fractures are we going to see, and how many people are going to change sides and start trying to get information from other people? The other evening, I spent some time on the How Did We Lose This World website. It basically loads up a fictional Mac home screen with a bunch of pictures and hidden clues from each episode. Just in case you haven't looked through it yourself, I thought I would wrap this video up by showing you what I found. If you open up episode 1, you can see the Righteous Vengeance reports. Naval fire, unidentifiable cloud-like interference at approximately 50,000 feet, 500 clicks to target, mysterious substance, a clinic in Fairfax, Virginia, New Orleans, Keane suggested a plan, a drill that would not disturb the soil up top, and then of course the Heidi Stenson clinic in Fairfax, which is where we know that Charlotte is. It shows you a clip here of episode 1, which I find interesting. It's the one where Charlotte's saying, like, why did you assume it was a date? I find that interesting they've included that. We see the incident notes. We see Cernkovich, who is Victor, that we met in episode 2, if I remember rightly. 3 casualties, 2 fatalities, and a female. We know that female is referring to Charlotte. We see the likes of the Keane family home, as well as a patient file, speaking about how she is alert and awake, there's memory loss, the fact that her treatment is being administered daily, eventually there'll be objects from her past used. This is all stuff that we were kind of talked through by Victor in episode 2. Now this bit's interesting. There is a screenshot from this testing trial. It says here, prisoner, and then the name has been scratched out. The patient no longer recalls committing the crime of. Now this is eerie to me. We know that Victor has done these previous memory suppression tests on patients before, and we know essentially it was prisoners of countries indebted to the United States. But one of these patients has committed a crime. Is it a crime of treason? Giving out leaks of information to the press, a bit like what Helen and Daniel want to do? I wonder if this will come back up at some point, considered it's all been included here. Let me know what your thoughts are below. I'm interested to see if anyone can work this out, or if there's other information that maybe I'm missing. Comment below. I really like how they added these little details. We have like a Google Maps screenshot and the comms tape. We also have an email here from Phil, who was Helen's previous boss, the one who fired her. Hope all is well, as you've been slow to respond. Can you please plan to work from the office today and to see me once you're in? We see a picture of the chess game that was talked about in this episode, And we see another screenshot of when they were scanning Daniel's keycard. Right at the bottom it says unauthorized access detected, and I'm wondering if it kind of triggered something and that's where they knew to come and find Steve and basically ransack the place, is because it accidentally gave up their location. And if you open the episode 4 folder, it's a similar bunch of screenshots as well. What's interesting is if you open Spiral, you can see some additional notes. You can see the notes from the coroner about Orla and the blunt force trauma to the head. If you open the Silo relics, you can see a bunch of stuff about the Duck Pez dispenser and a little bit of information there should you want to read through it. The most interesting part, however, is a locked folder called Silo Notes. I had a few different guesses as to what it could be. I first thought it was the username, Bigfoot Lives, but that didn't work. Knowing the title of Season 3, Episode 5, which is coming this following week, is Memory, I tried that. And I got in. Let me show you what I found. Within the folder, there are 3 images, notes 1, 2, and 3, and all of them are images of the notes that have been given to Juliette. The first was written by Walker and was given to Juliette before she went outside. The second one was the advice to leave the bowl turned upside down. And the third was one about the council meeting, which I still think is from Camille. I'm wondering if in the next episode, titled Memory, Juliette is going to be working through these notes and trying to piece together who is who, and whether or not more memories come flooding back now that she's met Bernard. She's beginning to remember George, so is she going to start to remember the watch, and maybe more about her father, and she's probably still on the hunt for Lukas Kyle. I'm very excited to see these two meet properly, because I think it would be very interesting to see what they have to say to each other. There's probably a hell of a lot more to go over with this episode, and if I find anything else, for sure I'll put it in a video. If you have anything that you would like to add and that you think is important to share with us, the Silo fan base, comment it below. If there's anything that would be a major spoiler, please do put spoiler in the comment and maybe put it further down. That way people can choose to click read more should they want to. If you did enjoy this video, please do give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out. You can also click hype. It basically pushes me further on the algorithm and allows new audience to find my channel. You can also click subscribe and turn the notifications on. That way you won't miss any videos from me as the season goes on. As always, thank you very, very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Toodles!